The title of this will be ISIL Part 1. A few days ago, President Obama spoke from the White House. He had a tan suit on, which I won't even bother to get into. I'll let the twits on Twitter play that little game. But he did speak about ISIL, and he did indicate that there was not a full strategy that had been put in place by the United States to handle the problem with ISIL. I concur wholeheartedly that there should be a full-fledged strategy on defeating and annihilating ISIL. I don't believe in almost anything that any Republican has put forward in terms of bomb, or possibly boots on the ground. Let's take a little bit of not necessarily a history lesson, but a geography lesson, that ISIL got started in Syria. Syria has had a civil war going on for several years. You can say that it's economic in nature. You could say that it's religious in nature. You could say that there is global warming, as they have had a tremendous drought for the last several years, that all of those things are coming into play. And right next to Syria is Iraq. The northern part of Iraq is Shia, and most of Syria is Sunni. So we have that's going into play. So the ISIL has taken over a number of areas in Syria, being the bad boys of the Sunni, and then going into Iraq and taking a number of towns in the Shia section. And let's remember that the Iraqi forces in those towns basically cut and ran. And they had probably more than enough firepower to defeat ISIL. ISIL did have a little bit of their attacks were the Iraqis weren't prepared for the attacks. They cut and ran. So there's a lot going on here. Now, getting back to the president, we have to have a strategy. So what does that involve? Well, let's just say Syria is Sunni, Iraq is mostly Shia. We have a number of other players that are involved in there. Saudi Arabia and its little countries nearby it, in terms of Qatar, United Arab Emirates. You got Iran, which is Shia. You have the northern part of Iraq, which is Kurdistan, which also goes into parts of Turkey and also into parts of Iran. Turkey is probably the biggest player in terms of military power there. They are reluctant to get involved. They want to be part of the European Union, but they do have a strong Muslim heritage in that area. They don't want their eastern part of Turkey being annexed by Kurdistan, if it comes to that. Iran doesn't want the northern part of their country annexed by Kurdistan, so there's these forces that are going on in there. Saudi Arabia, which is a big player, is also Sunni. So in terms of, there wasn't a case of Sunni on Sunni fighting in this particular area until just recently, when Egypt and I believe it was Qatar did some bombing in Libya. So there's a lot going on there, and the United States had better be pretty darn careful as to how they're going to select who's to play. And also, the United States has been reluctant to go into something like this, considering all of the time and effort that we had put together to work with Iraq so that they could be a self-sufficient country. And as soon as ISIL came into town, they just cut and ran. So, and also, let's go down a little bit militarily. Saudi Arabia has a tremendous air force. They have a big standing army. Turkey has a pretty big air force. They have a pretty big standing army. They could do a lot of help in terms of helping out Iraq. I don't think Iraq wants the help of Iran, even though Iran is doing a lot of proxy work in there. So, but they're doing proxy work for the Shia. And also remember that one of the reasons why President Obama did not want to get involved in this months and months ago with al-Maliki is because after al-Maliki had been brought in by the Bush administration and was well entrenched in there when the Obama administration came in, that all it really was, by the time that Obama administration came in, was a Shia theocracy in Iraq. And the Sunnis were being marginalized, the Kurds were being marginalized, the Christians were being marginalized, and one of the reasons why the Obama administration did not want to get involved initially with ISIL in Iraq is that they had cut their ties to the different different types of people in Iraq, and we're staying just with the Shia. So the Obama administration wanted a plurality government of all of the factions to be involved. And of course, that still hasn't happened, or if it has happened, they still haven't worked out anything as of yet. So we have all these players that are going on in there, and it's all based on religion. It's all based on parts of religion. And it's a real kinder tag. And it's a real mess. And we played our cards once in Iraq. I don't know how much more we want to play them again. The same thing might be unfolding in Afghanistan as we're getting ready to pull out of that country too. That's not to bring into another thing. But I mean, the American people do not want to be involved in any type of military operation. Saudi Arabia has plenty of firepower. Turkey has plenty of firepower. Iran has plenty of firepower. There's a lot of things that they can do to help out the situation. Even though we're subsidizing a heck of a lot of Egypt, they have a fair amount of firepower. And I'm not precluding which way anyone should go in all of this. I'm just saying that and of course, let's get to another thing, is that who's helping out Syria quite a bit, and that's Russia. And of course, as we know, Putin likes to dabble in a lot of things and pretend he's not really dabbling in those types of things. And one of the reasons why America has not really wanted to get too involved in any type of air war in Syria is because Syria has very, very good air defense systems, and we don't want anyone going down in that country. Meaning if we're flying any of our planes in that country for any type of bombing purposes. So there's just a tremendous amount going on in there. There's back channels going on in terms of all of these countries and how we're going to work it together. And of course, Kerry's running around trying to come up with some type of an alliances in terms of working together to get rid of ISIL. In the meantime, that all this stuff's going on in the background, ISIL is still doing their terrible, terrible things in Iraq, and that needs to be stopped. But America cannot, and it was said, I believe, a week or two ago by one of the top military guys, is that we're not going to defeat ISIL just with air power. Meaning that there needs to be boots on the ground, and it's not going to be our boots on the ground. It's going to have to be somebody else's boots on the ground, and someone's going to have to take a much greater role in this. When there is that much stuff that's going, when Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Iran, they have all kinds of boots, and they have all kinds of firepower, and that's a regional issue. We could like to work with them to have them find a way to work the whole thing out. At the same time, we have to get a little bit involved because we don't want ISIL to take over anything more in Iraq. So President Obama has been highly, highly criticized by saying we have not had a full strategy, because a strategy basically involves that you have a destination, that you have a final goal, and that you have all of the tactics that are going to be necessary to achieve that final goal. And President Obama was very honest with saying that this will be an ongoing thing and it's going to last longer. It's, it's not one of those things where it's going to be done sooner rather than later, like Cheney said back in 2003. Or was that Rumsfeld? I can't remember. Rumsfeld probably said that. But this is going to be a long-term type of thing, and we need, and of course, we still want a lot of oil. We want the oil to still come from Iraq. We still want oil coming from Iran. Saudi Arabia still has plenty of oil that's going on out there. We want all of that. So because we want all the shipping lanes to be open. So there's a lot that's got to go on while we're in the process of defeating ISIL. Another thing that keeps getting talked about is American Muslims going over to that area to join ISIL. Those from Europe, and again, what's going to help us track them, keep tabs on them, maybe arrest them, intercept them. Whatever it is we have to have, Interpol's got to be working their thing. We have to be working our thing. We have to be working with immigration. We have to be working with Department of Homeland Security to track all these people, to monitor all the social websites, to find out who these people are that are leaving our country, that are trying to get back in. So there's a lot going on. And we need the help of our partners. We have to come up with strategic strategy so that we can implement all of our tactics. It's going to be longer rather than sooner, and that's the only way that it can be said. And for my sisters and brothers on the conservative side who are jumping all over, my face just turned really red. So I better get done with this. This has got to be done by us coordinating with our partners. Once we get that strategy, once we have all the tactics, then we can start implementing the destruction and complete annihilation of ISIL.